If we have a healthier relationship to ourselves, we have a healthy, clear relationship to our money, which informs our values, then are we going to date differently? Are we going to choose differently? Are we going to require essentially us meeting in aligned values if we're already in a relationship? And then if those values are not aligned and there's not the concerted effort on both parts to actually work on it, then can we be courageous enough to leave? Hello, my gorgeous. Welcome to another episode of Natalia Benson, the podcast. It is so wonderful to be with you again. I am back this month for solo episodes. I'm very, very excited. I literally cannot wait to dive into this episode particularly. And in addition, the next episode that'll air in 2 weeks from today, or whenever you're listening to this, 2 weeks on the 16th, is going to be about like my take on AI and astrology. So I'm very, very excited for that one. And if you haven't tuned in to the last month of episodes, we had the incredible Susan Grau. She is like guardian angel energy, like such a gorgeous episode. You babes really, really loved that one. I heard from so many of you how much that episode with Susan really moved you. And I also just want you to know, like, every time you reach out to me and you tell me just how an episode impacts you, it means so very much to me. We also had my dear, dear friend and sister, Tiffany Hurd, on, and we spoke about plant medicine. And that was a pretty powerful episode. I've never really talked about anything like that on NB the podcast, but I had an extremely powerful experience with ayahuasca led by Tiffany. And it was just like that episode was very, very powerful to share. And over on Instagram, I actually heard from a lot of you angels on like your curiosity around microdosing and how Tiff really demystified that for you. And then some of you even shared like how plant medicine has like played a role in your life. So just so committed on this show, just to bringing you conversations and perspectives that only help you, heal and better and improve your life experience. Like that to me is just so important. And I know I've talked about this before, but many, many moons ago, I literally just sat with myself and I was actually in a, what is it called? Like a seminar. And I actually worked with like, what is my purpose and like, why am I here on this earth and what's important to me. And what came through so powerfully was like, I just want to live a better life and I want to help other people live a better life. So that's really what, all of my work is committed to. And that's especially what we're going to get into with this episode today. We're going to be talking about how to date your money. And this is actually an idea that like came to me in the shower, because something that I teach really, really powerfully through my money system and through MWMM is like creating a money date. Because essentially, if you want to have a healthy relationship with money, then you need to start treating money just like you would a relationship. Like that's really what it is. You are relating to every single thing in your life. Money is no different. And when we date our money and when we create space to actually intimately connect with our finances, and for some of you, you might be like, oh my God, where do I even begin? And I really hope that this episode specifically really demystifies that for you. And you can actually look at your approach to your finances in a more feminine way. So we're going to get into it. But something that I've been thinking a lot about, and I did a bit of research around, was really around like finances and relationships. And I found a pretty startling stat that basically was talking about how nearly 40% of divorces essentially occurred because of like financial infidelity or financial differences or differences in values when it came to money. And I've taught about this before, but the way astrology looks at this is like there's the second house, which is like your seen relationship to your finances. And then there's the eighth house, which is your more secret and unseen relationship to finances. And the truth is that every single person on this earth has both a seen relationship to money and an unseen relationship to money. The second house is Taurus ruled. It's material, it's earthy, it's like this stuff that we see. And then the eighth house, which is ruled by Scorpio, is like the unconscious and the unseen. And both Taurus and Scorpio, this axis specifically, is very, very concerned, so to speak. That's probably not the best word, but it's like very concerned with the allocation of resources. Taurus is like material resources, and then Scorpio is around emotional resources. Both want resources, but for unique reasons. Taurian energy, and I'm not speaking specifically about Taurians or specifically about Scorpios, but Taurians want like financial stability because of like material, earthy safety, because they're fixed earth, and fixed is what's known as like a quadruplicity. So the quadruplicity is not to go on a crazy tangent, but I do think this is interesting, is they relate to the seasons. And this is in tropical astrology. So cardinal signs, like I'm in Aries, my sign is the start of spring. Taurus is a fixed sign because it's the middle of spring. And then Gemini is a mutable sign, and mutable signs are like the changeable seasons. So basically the shift in the northern hemisphere from spring into summer. So if you can visualize that, and then the way astrologers look at it is we feel like that also really impacts like the energetics of how you express yourself. So that was a little bit of a tangy poo, but I think that stuff is so cool to understand. So essentially, Taurians want material security for the stability that it will provide, and Scorpios want stability for the emotional stability that it will provide and the power that it will provide. Both are also, again, I don't know a better word to use for this, but it's like both are concerned with power, so to speak, but again, power for different reasons. So you have a seen relationship to money, you have an unseen relationship to money. And when you date your money, and you are stepping into a relationship, a healthier relationship with your money, then you are choosing to work with both the material and the immaterial emotional sides of your finances. Because I'm sure if you've listened to my money episodes, or you've joined me in a masterclass, or you're with me in MWMM, or you've ever been with me in MWMM, then you know very powerfully, like, how important this stuff is, and that it can be remarkably emotional. So I've been thinking a lot about finances and relationships because I am really, really clear that in the partnership that I am, working on myself to create and really raising my self-worth to cultivate, I know that I want money to be a healthy topic that we partner on. I feel like in my past relationships, I've always had like a very unconscious relationship with my finances, even doing this work. And then I brought that sort of overflow, especially from like, I talked a lot about in a recent episode about the father wound. And my dad was a Scorpio, and he had a very it's so funny because he was so powerful and he was just so together, but he grew up with so much scarcity. So I remember he would have these like episodes when we would go to a nice dinner, like maybe a place that was a little fancier than usual. And he would just be stern and so unpleasant. And my mom even said like later in his life, he actually did the same thing. This was such an unconscious, this was not only very scorpionic, but this was his eighth house energy with money. And the reason I bring that forward is because I remember in one of my first relationships in like my early 20s, I remember we had something come up about money. Obviously, we were so young, and like this person like lived with their family, and what was I doing? What was I doing? God, I was in LA. So I definitely was living on my own, but we didn't really have to intertwine anything financially, obviously, because we were, I don't know, I think I was 23 years old or something. But I remember we got into this moment and I saw this part come out of me where I was like, oh, wow. I mean, I was so young, and especially in my early 20s, was I working on myself? Absolutely not. I didn't even know what inner work was at that time. I was just getting into astrology and tarot. And that, frankly, was waking up my consciousness and helping me be more self-aware. But in this relationship, I remember not being self-aware at all. And I likely caused a lot of hurt to this person. And that's a lot of the inventory that I've been doing lately, is just like looking at my past relationship patterns and the role that I played and where I can heal and do better and be a more mature, anchored partner. And this to me is important because if the divorce rate is nearly 40% and it has to do with finances, then wouldn't it just follow that it's important for us to have a healthy awareness to ourselves, a healthy relationship to money, so that we can bring that into our relationship and have that be a value and a requirement? And something, I went to lunch with one of my new besties. Her name is Sarah, and she's in a very beautiful marriage. And I was asking her, I was just like, what do you feel constitutes like a healthy relationship and a healthy partnering? And she said, honestly, I really feel like when it comes to like healthy relationships, it's so, so deeply important that you like essentially like care for your side of the street, and you are both willing to be contributors to the betterment of your relationship. And I also feel like, looking at my relationship history, I was not in dynamics where both of us were really in, like, what I like to say, like we were in the boat rowing together. It was usually like, I feel like I was rowing the boat. I was like, okay, well, like you can row sometimes, but it's like, I am such, especially in this season of my life, I'm so growth oriented because I don't like to suffer. So if I look back on my past relationships and I'm like, okay, what role did I have to play? Then I know that moving forward, and especially when I start to date again, I can really look for things, because I have a clear relationship, not only to myself, but also to my finances. There's going to be values that must be met. And another thing that Sarah and I talked about was like the value component, that you have to be with someone where your values are aligned. And I think for women, I know this has been true for me, it's like, how do you talk about those things? How do you bring those things forward? But they're so, so unbelievably important. And I'm curious, if we have a healthier relationship to ourselves, we have a healthy, clear relationship to our money, which informs our values, then are we going to date differently? Are we going to choose differently? Are we going to require a certain level and a value, like essentially us meeting in aligned values if we're already in a relationship? And then if those values are not aligned and there's not the concerted effort on both parts to actually work on it, then can we be courageous enough to leave? Or can we be courageous enough? And I don't mean we just need to like skedaddle the moment that there's like an issue, but I do think that it's really important. And this is something I don't feel like I did, that I've done in my past relationships, where like at the first sign, and then the second sign, and then the 20th sign, where I still stick around, and then I'm doing all this solo work to make something better. I'm curious if God universe gave me another chance to be like, okay, you're in this season, you're 38 years old, you're single, you're divorced, you're out of this relationship. And I'm in this season where I'm getting to evaluate so many things, because essentially, even though this divorce and the release of this relationship was a healthy thing for both me and my ex, it doesn't mean it doesn't still register as a loss. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that we often do the work that we're here to actually do when we're not getting everything that we want. When we're getting everything that we want, or we're comfortable, or however that registers, a lot of times we can sit in inertia because our needs are being met or our comfort zone is met. But I know that, the release of this relationship and being in this season of life where I'm on my own again and I'm, doing so much inner work. And also, it's not all inner work. I definitely do a lot of inner work, but I'm also having a lot of beauty and a lot of just spaciousness to like explore and understand who I am as a woman. Because when I met my ex-husband, I was 31 and I was just barely getting my bearings when he and I met. I definitely had found my footing, but it was new. It was literally months old when he and I met. And then I did a lot of growing and a lot of healing while we were together. But I don't know. It's like I was comfortable and my needs were being met. So there were certain things that were just a blind spot that I couldn't really see. So my question remains, with the work that we do on ourselves, with the love that we pour into ourselves, with the care that we take of ourselves, of our finances, do we then make different choices and hold a different level of values when we are dating and when we are choosing a true partnership? Question mark, question mark, question mark. But this is like an exciting question mark to me. And it's something I want to continue to bring forward more in my work as I, move into this season. And I'm excited. So let's just talk a little bit about like the minutia of like a money date. So very simply, a lot of us ignore our finances. We ignore money. And the reason we do that is because it makes total logical sense. If something feels chaotic to you, why would you approach it? And I know, and if you've heard me and you're like, Natty, I've heard you talk about this before. Good. Like the more I talk about this, I really want it to sink in because the question will always be, are you making the changes and are you like applying yourself to these principles, so to speak, because they're so, so important. It's the adage I used in an earlier money episode of like, if your desk is chaotic, you're not going to want to sit there and get great work done. But if your desk is beautiful and you feel good in your space and everything's organized and amazing, this is actually something that James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits, which is one of my favorite books. I only read it once and I only needed to read it once. And just a quick aside, I've been reading a book off and on called 10x is easier than 2x by, oh my gosh, Dan Sullivan. It's sitting behind my desk, but it's cool because he actually talks about James Clear's process in writing Atomic Habits because it was an unbelievably successful book. And he essentially applied the 10x is easier than 2x principles in writing Atomic Habits. And the reason I bring that forward is because the truth is I've only read that book once, but I remembered the principles. Like that's how powerful this book was. That's how clearly it was written. That's how effectively it was written. So that's really amazing. And the same goes with our relationship to money. When we have a clear, effective relationship to money, it simplifies everything. It simplifies absolutely everything in our lives. I remember having a thought when I was thinking about my old relationship to money and how chaotic and crazy it used to be. And then I was thinking about when I got organized and I did the boring stuff to like take care of it and give myself a simple system, which is what I teach in my work, what I'm talking to you about today, my loves. Very, very simply, I really got to see like, oh my God, this is so unbelievably cool. I haven't thought about my money in like 5 days because I have a system. I know I have my money date. I have my automations. I do my updates every week. It's like a lot of people tell me that they want money because they want to feel free. And I look at money and a financial system like the one that we're talking about today and the one that I teach as like healthy masculine energy. And something I really realized over the years, because I've had some of the wounding around my dad and a very interesting and challenging relationship with men throughout my life, I really think that having a healthy relationship to money was like an outpicturing of this. So I wouldn't need to rely on anyone. And now I'm going to go back to sort of like my guesstimations and my questioning, because that's my Sag Moon philosophical space that I'm in. But I'm just like, okay, this is where I'm going to test my theory at some point as I become even more grounded, abundant, secure in self, and secure with my finances. Can that healthfully impact my choices? And I'll be very honest with you. So I teach something about like the spender saver paradigm, where I see us all as landing somewhere on the spectrum between a saver hoarder and a spender, like you don't even know what's going on. You're just literally like spending into oblivion. And what I feel is that as we heal our relationship to our finances, we get into the middle. We get somewhere in the middle where we're circulating money, which is what the spender likes to do, and we're able to be generous and care for ourselves and have fun in the moment. But we're also taking a page from the book of the saver, where we're investing, where we are paying into our future, where we're making sure that we have a surplus, where we have a cushion, where we have a runway fund, etc. And so the idea is that we want to get to that healthy middle place. But I will tell you, I'm more on the spender. I really like to spend money. I love to circulate money. I love beautiful things. I really enjoy luxury. When I travel to the nines. I don't travel a ton, but when I do it really well and sort of for shorter periods of time, because that's just what my income at this point allows me to do. But I started to notice something. When I had issues in my relationship, I would spend, and I would spend on my credit card. And I looked at it as like this carefree way of like being held by the masculine. And I don't know if that makes sense, or if anyone else can relate to that, but it's like, I wasn't feeling like I could get the support that I needed. And I didn't really know what to ask for or what to require or what my value was in a clear, concerted way. So I just had this like unconscious habit of just spending on my credit card and buying myself whatever I wanted. And before anyone is like, like, so do you want a man just to spend on you so you can buy whatever you want? It's not so much that. For me, it was just the feeling of support and being supported and being able to do whatever it is that I wanted. But what I realized is I had to get to that root issue. And so what I did like a couple of years ago is I really got to my root issue around like how I was eating. And I've talked about that in like my body transformation episode. And I really got to the root of how I was spending. And then eventually when I explored both of those things and I pulled them back and I started to take extremely good care of my health, and I got really, really disciplined with my finances and my tracking and my spending. Well, I got divorced not long after that because I really got to see that these things were like symptomatic of just some deeper values that were misaligned and I wasn't feeling supported. And I think this is even something that really came up for me during this eclipse season that just passed. Was so intense. It actually happens in my money access when it's the Virgo Pisces eclipse. It happens in like my second house and my eighth house. And this last one occurred at 29 degrees in my eighth house in Virgo. And gosh darn it, it was potent because I really got to see, okay, are you going to perpetuate these patterns of feeling unsupported in your life from the people in your life, especially people, whether it's past partners or it's people who work closely with you, friendships? It's like, what does support mean to you? And do you feel supported? And My loves, what I'm finding, especially having so much time like alone and spending so much time with myself and so much time doing like my step work and my internal inquiries and therapy and all the things that I'm up to these days, I'm really getting to see like how important support is for me, and that the way I care for my money is a way that I support myself. The way, and not even to mention, like money is the root of support. But if you can show money that you're willing to show up for it and support it, it's going to in turn offer you support and freedom. So I'm curious if you want to just like feel into this for a moment as you're listening to this. How does this register for you? So if I told you that having a money date could help you call in more money, if I told you that having a money date could help you feel more free, more prosperous, more spacious, I would ask you, why is that important to you? Or what do you want from money? So even just take a moment and let that question like percolate. Like, why is it important to you? Like, get to a why. We need whys. If you don't have a why, if you don't have a truly clear, clarified why, you will stop at the first sight of challenge and discomfort, and you will make discomfort mean that something is wrong with the process. I actually have it on my phone background right now. You're not doing it wrong. You're just in the part that makes most people want to quit. And I just love that so much. I feel that way with like, my dream of cultivating a healthy partnership in my future, even like my next level financial goals, scaling my business in a sustainable way, having more surplus and more spaciousness, more capacity for generosity, more capacity for stability. I'm not in my potential in both of these areas. So I have moments where like I get super frustrated and I'm just like, oh yeah, you're not doing it wrong. You're just in the part that makes people want to quit, because when you have a vision or you have something that you want, you're going to have like God universe is going to give you the process in which to create that. You know what I mean? It's like God is going to give you the process. You're going to get the process on how to create that outcome. But what happens so often is like, we don't want the process. We just want it dropped in our laps. We just want the freedom. We just want the 7-figure bank account. But like, you have not cultivated yourself yet to be the person who could steward that. And that's what I recognize for me in the realm of like partnership is I'm just like, okay, so because we're talking about this concept, this sort of entendre of like dating your money and asking the question, can a healthier relationship to finances as a woman have you hold higher standards and more deeply healthy boundaries and values in your dating life or in your partnership, current partnership or future partnership? And that is the question I've had with myself is like, okay, so if I want a particular kind of energy in my relationship with a man, then who am I and what am I bringing? Like, am I at the echelon to actually contribute to someone's life in a way that I want to be contributed to? I think what I recognize from my past is that I made it all about me. I've always made everything about me, both with men and with money. And it's like both of those things, and I look at it as a mirror as well. So it's like the mirror reflection I've gotten back. Okay, here's my work. Here's where I get to grow, heal, and evolve. That's why we outgrow people. That's why we outgrow habits and situations. Because if we're devoted to allowing life to mirror things back to us and then using that as like a springboard to grow, then what happens? Like, we are ever evolving, and not in this perfectionistic like way, but just like, that's what we're here to do. Like, I believe that souls incarnate to grow. And if we think about it, so many of us come here, especially as like spiritual women, and we really want to have we want to have spaciousness. We want to have a great life. We want to be generous. We want to receive. We want to have healthy relationships, whether they be friendships, intimate relationships, business partnerships, bosses, if we're working in a career. There's a lot of things that we want. And so life is going to give us the reflection of how we can heal or grow and evolve to be the kind of person, the kind of woman who can steward those results and care for them and help them grow. And then if that same growth orientation isn't coming back, especially let's say in a relationship with a person, then we know when to say goodbye. So let's get into, I know I said this, I went on a little bit of a tangy doodles, felt important. So we want to date our money because we want to create a healthy relationship with our money. That's just point blank where we are. If we're in an interpersonal dynamic with our money, just like we are with a romantic partner, then what do? We need to show up. We need to take care. And there needs to be like clear, healthy boundaries. This is true also in the realm of human relating as well. So you just need a system. And so my system, the first thing we look at is we get to know your Venus sign, because your Venus in your astrology, in your natal chart, this is going to represent the generative energy in your blueprint. So this is literally going to represent the ways in which you are here to generate creativity, magnetism, abundance, beauty. It's also the ways in which you're here to empower your exchange. So what do I mean by that? How you receive and also how you give. Your Venus placement, both by zodiac sign and house, shows you that uniquely as you. And I teach on my Venus placement all the time because a lot of you babes are familiar with me. So you're familiar with the fact that in my natal chart, my Venus is in Pisces and it's in the second house of money. So Pisces is the archetype of the mystic. And then the second house is the house of money. How interesting that I combine spiritual principles, mystical principles, empathetic principles into the space of money and the material, like taking care of our material life through the stability that we can create through our finances. Like, just to give you an example. And so, and obviously I've been at this for a little while, so mine's very, very developed. You might be hearing this, or you might know your Venus placement, be like, oh, I don't feel like I'm lined up with it, but let it be your North Star. And don't let it tell you what to do. Like, you're here to create, but your placements in your astrology, they give you the reflection back of like what you're here to create and cultivate. So when you get to know your Venus placement, it's really powerful. So that's the first step in the system. Then we work with money tracking. Money tracking is where you get to know the cadence of your finances. This is where you see your spending. This is where you actually get to see like, how much money am I making? And I said this last night. I taught a masterclass last night called the Stability Method, and it was so much fun. We had a great time. So beautiful. Thanks to everyone who joined. This episode is coming out a little later than when we recorded that, but it was so beautiful. And one thing that I'll say is like, we got to really tap into the incredible, incredible truth with money tracking, which is that the only way for you to ever transform or change anything is like, you have to pay attention to it. You can't ignore it. And a lot of us, and I say this with so much gentleness, but it's like, we just want to bury our heads in the sand and like expect something to change on its own. And I'll be honest, I've recognized the part in me where I have always had this internal dialogue of like, oh, a man will just save me. A man will take care of it. A man will do it. And even when I was like dating and doing my thing in LA before I met my ex-husband, I remember like dating certain people, not for who they were as people, but because I thought they were going to help me like escape the things I didn't want to do. And ironically, I met my ex and we had our 6-year relationship, which is the longest I've ever been with anyone on this earth in a relationship. Went by very fast, interestingly enough. But I met him 5 months, 6 months after I started to do money management. So I finally found like that missing piece, so to speak, for myself, where instead of waiting for someone to save me and waiting for someone to make things better for me, I actually just ended up doing it for myself first. And then I met, a person who was ready and willing to be in a relationship with me. And even though that relationship was not perfect, as they are not, it was perfectly imperfect. One day I want to do an episode, you guys will have to remind me. I want to do an episode about the vertex. This is a point that I had heard about in studying astrology, but I have a subscription to the pattern and I really like it. I really, really like the pattern, even though they use whole sign, which isn't like the house system that I'm a Placidus girly, even though I love all the systems. But it's interesting for me for them to always be reading me my whole sign chart. But I feel like it's actually extremely accurate for me in this season of life that I'm in. But what I'll say is like the vertex is essentially a fated point in the chart. And when you have a conjunction with someone else's vertex, it is like a fated relationship, meaning your souls are like, we are in. This is happening. And that was exactly how it felt. And I researched because my ex and I, our vertexes were 1 degree apart in our 7th house of marriage. And when I researched vertex 7th house, it said that the release of the relationship, which it would release having your vertexes that close together, typically vertex conjunctions, I don't want to say blanket statement, say all, but from what I understand about vertex connections, it isn't meant to last. There's a reason. It's almost like a strong karmic contract. And when it's done, you are literally a different person. And what's interesting is that with my ex and I's, the release of our relationship, when I looked on ChatGPT and I was like, what does it mean to have with my ex-husband to have a 1 degree conjunct vertex in Leo in the 7th house? And it said the release of the relationship will allow both of you to be free to be who you truly are, especially in relationships. I wept reading that because obviously it's painful to go through divorce, even if it's right. Even if it's right, it's still hard. But reading that and receiving the context that astrology provides, I was like, I know that this was for our growth as souls. So I don't know how the frick I just did that. I'm talking about money tracking and then I started talking about vertex. Welcome to my brain. Oh my God, I love it. From money tracking with our money date, we then do our money management. So the money management that I teach, you use multiple bank accounts, and every bank account, it's all at the same bank, but every bank account has a job. So you have like a future self account, which is like your savings and your investments. You have a deposits account. That's where all your money allocates to. So if you get money through your business, if you get money through a job, everything goes into this deposits account. It's the only account that receives deposits. You also can see how much money you're bringing in. My money management system and the way that I teach it, it's based off of like, it's not so much like the envelope system, but it's like a modern version of like a jar system, which is like a very kind of traditional personal finance tool. Like people will use jars to like allocate for specific things. So we don't use jars, we use bank accounts, and each bank account has like a job. So to begin this, like when you have a deposit, you then allocate to the accounts. And to begin, especially if you don't have a system set up, my loves, I would say convert an account that you're actively using into your deposits account. You definitely have one. You already have like an account that's already receiving deposits. So just make it be like, okay, this account only receives deposits and it only allocates. And then you likely have a personal account, and then you likely have a savings account. And if you have a business, then hopefully you have like a business account. And what you want to start to do is you don't want to intermingle all of your transactions in one account. You want everything to have its own account. It's just easier. Another thing of feeling supported by your finances is like, you just need a little organization, and it's going to feel easy. Remember, we can't transform what we won't pay attention to, and we're going to ignore things when they feel chaotic. We're not going to want to deal with it. So this little system where you can very, very simply, very, very easily have a couple of bank accounts. They have very specific jobs. That already is going to give you such peace of mind so that when you sit down to do your money date, you're like, okay, I got a deposit into my business. I had a client pay me. Okay, I'm going to allocate into my specific accounts or your buckets or whatever, however you want to think of it visually. I'm going to send this amount to my personal account. I'm going to send this amount to my business account. I'm going to save this much. This is a vast simplification, but it's an easy way, because I just want you to think, like when I sit down to do my money date, I just want to feel like it's easy. I just want to feel like I know what I'm doing. So tracking our money is how we get to know our money cadence, our spending, how much we're making. Our money management shows us, okay, I'm getting these deposits. This is how much I have. This is where I'm sending it. I'm paying into my future. I'm putting money aside for taxes if I need to. And then in the ensuing, let's say, part of your date, this is where you update like your debt if you have any debt. This is where you update your net worth. So you check on like your investments, you check on your retirement accounts. This is where you actually sit and you're like, okay, money, what are you doing? And something I teach is like, there's a healthy way to use debt and there's an unhealthy way to use debt. Not all debt is bad. You definitely don't want high APR debt. But you know what? As crazy as this sounds, and this might be a little controversial to say, but to live in a system where debt, like credit, is available is pretty powerful. But it also, obviously, there's so many social issues that go with this. Obviously, income discrepancies and all kinds of things, because some people actually have to use credit to survive. And while I can't speak into that specifically, I know I've had seasons of my own life where I've had to rely more heavily on credit than other times. And then I've had seasons in my life, like I shared, where I was using credit very emotionally and very unconsciously. There's a way to use credit, but not all credit is bad. And something I teach my women, especially in MWMM, is like, I call it debt healing, because a lot of times debt can make us feel so shameful and heavy. But there are seasons where like we need debt and we need a credit system and we want it. Like even I'm about to go on a trip and I'm going to Paris. I'm going to go see my mama bear, and it would have been her and my daddy's wedding anniversary. So it just aligned. I knew after I got divorced, I wanted to go to Paris. Just that was something that I had wanted to do for a long time and that we never did. So I was like, I'm going to go. And then I kind of put it off. And then my mom was like, I'm going to be there. So now we get to go and have a trip together, like literally right after my mom and dad's wedding anniversary. So that feels very kismet. And what was interesting is I literally got to research. So I was talking to ChatGPT and I was like, okay, I'm traveling. I only use debit cards. I actually am on a total credit fast. So I don't use credit right now at all. I only buy something if I have cash for it. And what's interesting is I was like, well, shoot, what am I going to do? I can't really use my freaking debit card in Paris. That's not really going to work. So I was researching. I was like, okay, I'm doing this credit fast, and I don't want to get these foreign transaction fees because that's a big thing when you travel. Oh my God. Even like I just paid someone on my team and she lives in Australia, and I literally saw the charge that came through buying it through my freaking debit card. And I was like, oh my God, I should have used my credit card and just paid it off immediately because there's no foreign transaction fees with certain credit cards. You have to research. But it was really fun because of my money management system, because of my money dates, I was able to sit down and really make this applicated. What am I talking about? You guys, I also like taught for like 2 hours last night. I have this bright light in my face. I'm like, I'm just like laughing. I probably need some water because I'm going to record another episode right after this. And I'm just like, okay, let me keep my brain going. What I found really beautiful is I sat down and I started researching credit cards, and I was like, okay, instead of me coming to you from need, I'm making a concerted choice of what kind of credit card I want. What's the APR? Can I get a 0% APR for a year? Okay, amazing. That's first thing. Are there foreign transaction fees? Okay, no, there aren't. Perfect. So this is perfect for traveling. And then there were some other fun things like perks and spending and things like that. So maybe I'm already answering my question. When we are clear, solid, and anchored, and we start making better choices, we start making better choices. Like it's almost like I'm shopping for my credit card and I'm looking for the things that I want. And this will be the same as I am ready to look for and be available for a healthy partnership. It's just like, okay, what do I really want? What am I willing to contribute? But I need to be grounded in self so I can make clear choices, not emotional ones. Okay, so with your money date, you check your debt, you check like where your net worth is, your investments, your retirement accounts. And if you have never thought about any of this stuff, my loves, then you must. I have a little invitation for you. Then you need to join me for the Financial Glow Up Challenge. We are going to be running this challenge from 10/21 to 10/26. So October 21st to October 26th. It will be a paid challenge. You're going to work with me every single day for 6 days, and we're going to set up your money system and your unique money date. So you're going to work with me 6 days in a row. There will be replays. So if you need to miss anything, it's also based on a course that I've already created. It's about 10 minutes a day to finish the coursework. But every single day you're going to meet with me, and we're going to build your money system, and we're going to build your unique money date so that you don't need to sit down and have some kind of overwhelming money date. You're going to sit down every week and have a clear, sexy, enjoyable date with your money. So we will not be opening I think that this episode is, oh, yay. Okay, cool. So this episode airs on the 2nd of October, I believe. And we are opening enrollment for the Financial Glow Up Challenge on the 9th. So what we'll do is we'll just have the link to my NB email list in the show notes. I'll make sure that my team puts it in there. And yeah, very simply, just make sure you're on there so you'll get first notification. We'll likely have, if you enroll in the first 24 hours, I haven't made the strategy yet, so I'm getting my ideas on the fly. I think what I'd like to do is if you enroll in the first 24 hours, you get it for way less. So yeah, that'll be fun. So enroll in the first 24 hours and get on the NB email list. This is literally my Manny Gen. I'm just like, okay, I haven't made the strategy for that yet, but as I'm talking through it, I'm like, that feels really good and exciting. Okay, so I'm very excited. So if you're loving what you're hearing, or you just want to have more calm, peace, power, abundance, freedom, expansion, the expansive magic of choice when it comes to your money, then join me for the Financial Glow Up Challenge. Okay, so join the NB email list so you're the first to know, and you can get that first 24 hour lower price. And then we'll start on the 21st, which is really exciting. And I really want you to think about this Glow Up Challenge as like, I'm prepping myself for 2026. My angels you may have had a financial goal or a financial focus for the beginning of this year, but nothing changes if nothing changes. You need new tools and habits. You can't just solely rely on astrology. You can't just solely rely on like something's going to happen and it's going to fix your financial stuff. You can do this. If I can do this, anyone can do this. And for those of you who don't know my story, I mean, I used to be afraid of money. I was allergic to money. Like $50 in my bank account was a good day. Like I have transformed and healed and expanded and structured. I'm going to leave you with a story and then we'll close up this episode. So a couple of years ago when my dad was still alive and I started to teach more of like my money management stuff, and I had built a system for MWMM and for like this mini course that I created called Money Management Mastery. That's what we'll be doing in the Financial Globe Challenge. I remember I was home in Boise visiting my family and my mom and dad specifically. I was staying at their house. And I remember I just asked my mom and dad, I was like, hey, will you come and look at this system that I built? I'm teaching women, I think this was 2 years ago. It was in like 2023. I was like, I'm teaching women how to do this because you guys know I used to be so scared of money and it was always really hard for me. And so I literally remember showing my mom and dad what I'd created, and I showed them my spreadsheets specifically. Like, so I showed them all my numbers and I showed them all the tracking I was doing. And even if I had debt, I showed them like the plan that I had to pay the debt and all the APRs and just like the different things. Like I just was so clear. And I remember my dad, he was like dumbfounded, but he had tears in his eyes because I know when I was younger, and especially when I had my first business, my parents were terrified that like I was just never going to get money. Like I just always really struggled and I really resisted it and I was afraid of it, frankly. So if I can transform, so can you. And maybe you're not in as dire of a scenario as I was, but maybe you're just in a place where you know you're not in your financial potential and you ignore your money, or you're just kind of afraid of it, or whatever it may be, no matter how much you're making. Well, then you're in the right place. First and foremost, I've got you. You're safe. You're doing amazing. And even just getting to the end of this episode is a freaking win. So give yourself a high five, give yourself a hug, and join the NB email list. If I said waitlist earlier, I don't know what I was thinking. I'm starting to get delulu. Join the NB email list in the show notes if you want to be the first to know about the Financial Globe Challenge. And show up to work with me from the 21st to the 26th of October. It's going to be amazing. I think something that helps with money, and that's why MWMM and my membership 6 years running is so effective, because we all need some accountability. Not even some, I'm lightening it a little bit. We all need accountability. We need like support. So that's what this is. And it's going to be 6 focus days so that if you've had resistance to doing stuff like this, resistance to getting your finances together, resistance be gone, because you're going to be so inspired. We're going to be doing this in a community. It's going to be amazing. So I can't wait to see you, angels, for that. Join the NB list below in the show notes so that you're the first to know, and you'll get that little discount the first 24 hours. We just created that strategy together. And I love you guys so much. This was such an honor to record. I really hope that this was helpful for you. And you are the lights of my life. I will see you in the next episode. Thank you for tuning in. I love you, and I'll see you soon.